Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem by Reno Anoa'i.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free? And the home of the brave.
Thank you. Good evening again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the first ever in the nation NHPI's campaign, kickoff campaign for the Biden and Harris for this November general election. We decided to call the event Pasifika Blue Wave 2020. This is the first time ever a presidential campaign has reached out and made a concerted effort to engaging and reaching out to the NHPI community. And we thank the Biden and Harris campaign for making this effort. My name is Talavou Aumavae, and I'm the co-chair of the affinity group NHPIs for Biden Harris, and I will be your moderator this evening alongside my co-chair.
Good evening, Talavou everyone. I am Manūfou Liaiga Anoa'i, and I am humbled to be your co-chair this evening for our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander affinity group for Biden and Harris. Before we go on, I think it goes without saying that we have lost such a hero in Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And because of that, because we're able to share and gather this evening our views of democracy, we'd like for everyone to join us at this moment as we recognize her heroic efforts in a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Atifo. And yes, we lost a true hero. May she ever rest in power. We have a jam-packed agenda this evening. We'd like to get through it as soon as we can. And thank you again to all the panelists for joining us and making the time to be here to speak to our community. All our panelists are aware of the time constraints and their speaking time requirements. Without further ado, we'll get started with our panel discussion. Our first, apologies, sorry for the mix-up. We will start with our panelists' introductions. So joining us from the Bay Area community, a community organizer in a program Administrator, Ms. Verna Castro. Thank you for joining us, Verna. Let's see here.
Thank you. Half a day, everyone.
Thank you again. Verna is a Pacific Islander Chamorro indigenous to Guam and LGBTQ female who goes by she, her, and hers. Verna attended the University of San Francisco, Stanford, and UC Berkeley, receiving a bachelor's and master's degrees. She believes deeply in quality education and that all schools should be excellent. She also believes in rigor and that each and every child should graduate with the global skills and dispositions in the ever-changing world. But first, they must have their basic needs met. Additionally, Verna believes that authentic partnerships with the community and city agencies can be linked with the schools to provide the best comprehensive, intentional wellness support to students. Verna is a current candidate for the Alameda School Board, and her equity platform includes bringing ethnic studies K through 12 to our school districts, as well as creating college and career pathways for students. So thank you again for joining us, Verna.
Good evening, everyone. We have joining us from the state of Washington, community activist, Antifa Imoana founder, Ruby Foala'au. Ruby is an unapologetic fa'afine, which translates to in the manner of a woman, creative, who dabbles in various artistic practices that express her creativity while continuing to keep the traditions of her Samoan culture alive. She is also the creative director, choreographer, costume designer, and instructor at Tifa'i Moana Dance in Hayward, California since 2014. Ruby also volunteers to dance, choreograph, sew, and co-create for many churches and senior care homes right here in the Bay Area, as well as nonprofits such as Samoan Solutions and Utopia of Seattle. She designs and hand makes traditional and couture Samoan regalia in hopes of sustaining her culture, adding her flair, but preserving the mana, the spirit of her ancestors for future generations. Born in Oakland, but raised in the island of Tutuila, American Samoa, she learned to siva and craft from her elders and peers through Tautua to her family, church, and the village of Asili. She strongly encourages everyone to step out of the dim lights of their comfort zones and run into the bright lights of creativity and ingenuity. Please welcome Ruby Foala'au.
Thank you, Antifo. And of course, as expected, coming with Zoom and utilizing this platform, we all of us have experienced technical issues. At this time, Ruby is trying to join us. So once she does, we'll acknowledge her, but we'll carry on with the program. But thank you again, everyone, for bearing with us through some of these challenges. Next, joining us from the Bay Area as well, we have community organizer and college professor, Ms. Anna Patero. Anna is Fijian, born of parents who immigrated from Tonga in 1955. As one among Pacific Island diaspora, she graduated from the Ko'oko High School, attended Chabot College and San Francisco University, where she earned a Bachelor's of Arts in English with an emphasis on language studies and a Master's in Speech Communications. Anna is a former speech and debate coach, and she is currently a communication study professor at Solano Community College. Additionally, Anna serves as a secretary for the Solano Commission for Women and Girls, and she's a candidate for the Fairfield-Sassoon Unified School District Governing Board. Anna believes that the US, as a representative democracy, is founded on collectivism, contrary to popular belief. A government of, by, and for the people means we must function collectively to enjoy the luxuries of individualism. So thank you again, Professor Patero. Thank you for joining us.
Joining us from 684 in American Samoa, community organizer Tia Reed. Tia has lived most of his life in Hawaii and American Samoa, where he calls home. He was a former Democratic National Committee intern, and his educational background in his political science undergrad and public policy and public administration in a master's program. He's employed by the American Samoan government, is an active member of the Democratic Party of American Samoa, and is the founder of nonprofit organization that supports underserved families and organizes coastal cleanups. He was the authorized representative of American Samoa for Kamala Harris's presidential primary campaign and was hired as the American Samoa State Director for the Mike Bloomberg presidential primary campaign. He was an at-large delegate for Hillary Clinton at the 2016 Democratic National Convention, and most recently, a delegate for Joe Biden at the 2020 virtual DNC. Welcome from American Samoa, Tia Reed.
Aloha, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Kia. And joining us from Southern California, we have clinical research endocrinologist and medical doctor, Dr. Reynald Samoa. He has a lifelong fascination with obesity-related disorders and has parlayed that interest into research projects investigating the metabolic conditions that affect populations vulnerable to diabetes, such as Pacific Islanders and cancer survivors. Dr. Reynald Samoa received his medical degree from the University of Washington. He did his adult endocrinology fellowship at the Los Angeles County University of Southern California and his pediatric endocrinology fellowship at Children's Hospital Los Angeles. Dr. Samoa is the clinical lead for the National Pacific Islander COVID-19 response team. The team is comprised of 10 different regional task force around the country and includes states such as California, Washington, Hawaii, Arkansas, Utah, and Arizona. Currently, he is an assistant clinical professor at the City of Hope Medical Center in Duarte, California. A warm welcome and thank you again, Dr. Samoa, for joining us.
Mahalo soifua. Thank you so much for the invitation.
And joining us from the state of Washington, community activist and organizer, Mane Tuia'ana. Mane is the proud child of Fa'amamata Lolongo from the village of Amauli and Yefata Tuia'ana from the village of Atu'u in American Samoa. Mane was born and raised in the land of the Duwamish people in Seattle, Washington, and is currently residing on the lands of the Puyallup Nation, Federal Way, Washington. Mane is unapologetically queer Fa'afafine and is a fierce youth advocate for our Pasifika communities in King and Pierce counties in Washington state. Mane has been advocating for Pacific Islander youth in education since 2011. From 2011 to 2019, Mane has helped increase the graduation rates of Pacific Islanders from 56% to 92% during his time as a paraeducator for Federal Way High School. Mane is now serving as the youth program coordinator for Asia Pacific Cultural Center, serving Tacoma and Clover Park school districts, where he is now revitalizing the Tautua youth program that uses our Pacific Islander culture to help make a positive impact in our youth today. Mane wears many different hats in the community, but loves spending time with family and friends and creating art through canvas and paint. Welcome, Mane.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's raining here in Washington, as always.
Thank you, Mane. Let's hear. And lastly, joining us from the state of Hawaii, we have Hawaii Senator and U.S. House candidate for Hawaii Congressional District 2. He is also serving as the Biden-Harris campaign surrogate for us this evening in our program, and that is Kai Kahele.
Aloha, mahalo.
Senator Kaili Kai Kahele was appointed to the Hawaii State Senate by Governor David Ige in February of 2016, following the untimely and unexpected death of his father, the late Senator Gil Kahele. He was subsequently elected and re-elected by wide margins in 2016 and 2018. Kai currently serves as the Majority Floor Leader of the Hawaii State Senate and Chairman of the Senate Committee on Water and Land. Additionally, Senator Kahele is Vice Chairman of the Hawaiian Affairs and a member of committees of Ways and Means and Higher Education. Kai championed a state Senate measure that establishes the Hilo Community Economic District that paves the way for the county and state investment in Hilo and East Hawaii's economic future. When not serving the public in the Senate or through his duties with the National Guard, Kai works as a commercial airline pilot with Hawaiian Airlines. He is the former executive director of a nonprofit that serves rural Native Hawaiian families in South Kona. Kai and his wife, Maria, live and are raising their young daughters in Hilo, Kai's hometown on the island of Hawaii. Thank you again for joining us, Senator.
Hey, mahalo. Thank you for having me. And it is raining here in Hilo, Hawaii as well, Mane.
Thank you again to our amazing panelists for joining us this evening. We are now going to move on to our panel discussion, which includes 4 questions to get their perspective and their views on civic engagement and the importance of this election. We're going to start with 2 questions and then we're going to go to a short break. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to my co-moderator.
Well, rain is a blessing in our culture, as we know. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with our first question. And the first question is, why do you believe this election is so important for our NHPI community? And I will send it off to Dr. Samoa to start us off.
I don't warm up so fast, so if it comes out incoherent, that's the reason. So COVID-19 has highlighted a lot of health disparities in the country. The pandemic follows along lines of disenfranchised communities. So there's a higher proportional impact on communities of color, such as African Americans, Latinx communities, Native Americans, and that includes Asian Americans, but Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders have the highest rates in a lot of the states that disaggregate their data. And so it just shows you that this disenfranchisement started way before COVID. COVID is just now focusing the light on it. And the Affordable Care Act and other initiatives that have been done by the previous administration were steps in the right direction. And we've seen a halting of that in this current pandemic. And I'm sure everyone else will be able to talk about sort of the longer term, but as the lead for our national response team, I can tell you right now that this lack of national direction, this lack of leadership to try to fight this pandemic, it is at our doorstep. It is the reason why we had to do it for ourselves. And going past to make sure the vaccines are safe, to make sure there's equitable distribution of these vaccines to high-risk communities, requires a change in leadership. And, you know, I don't know if it's my position as the clinical lead to promote any party, but I will tell you this direction that we're on now is the wrong one.
Thank you. We'll send it over to Honorable Senator Kahele. Why do you believe this election is so important for our NHPI community?
Mahalo for the question. You know, this election is absolutely critical and vital for everyone in America, but particularly important for groups who are underrepresented across our government and in the Congress. We need more voices for the NHPI community in the Congress. You know, I am looking forward to hopefully serving with leaders in Congress like Representative Sablan from the Northern Marianas Islands, like Representative San Nicolas from Guam, like Representative Aumua Amata Radewagan from the American Samoa Islands. And so, you know, I really passionately feel that this election is a fight for our democracy, and that democracy allows a seat of diverse groups to sit at that table. We know what our communities need, and it's through that democratic process that we can fulfill those needs. So much is at stake, like Dr. said, recovering from COVID-19, climate change, how it sea level rise affects Pacific Islands all across the Pacific. These things greatly affect our communities, and that is why this election and the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is so vitally important for our country.
Thank you. We're going to bring it back to the Bay Area. Professor Petero, why do you think this election is important for our community?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you again for the invitation. I fundamentally believe that this election is important for our people, our global survival as a people. I did some research just recently on the population, total population of Tonga, Samoa, Fiji, Hawaii, Guam, the Cook Islands, and New Zealand, just to see where we are as a people, because I believe we're an endangered species, and climate change and this election is fundamentally important to us. When I did a little bit of a survey on the total population of Tongans, Samoans, Fijians, Hawaiians, Guamanians, Cook Islanders, and New Zealand, people who live in Tonga, in our home countries, US and Australia, the total population of Tongans in Tonga, Australia, and the US is 181,000, just a little over. In Samoa, altogether, it's about 458,000, just a little over. Fijians, US and Australia, almost 1 million, 990,000. We're still in the 100,000s. We haven't even gotten to 1 million yet. Hawaii is like 989,000, and this is from the UN data. Guam is 168,000, Cook Islands, 17,000. And Tuvalu, speaking of rising sea levels, there are only 11,000 people in Tuvalu, in 10 square miles. And in New Zealand, 744,000. So the aggregate of which is 3,459,111 Pacific Islanders that I've mentioned. That is like just several hundred thousand more than the population of Utah and Wyoming. So I think it's so important for our global survival as an endangered species to elect Biden and Harris because of climate change. And I think when COVID happened, within the next few months, this administration started relaxing regulations, climate regulations, environmental regulations, and that's endangering us as a species. And so I think that's so important to me as a Polynesian. I don't want us to be extinct. I think that's important. Climate change is so important. That's why we should elect them both. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. We're going to go down south to American Samoa, to Tia Reed, if you can share your perspective.
Hi again, and thanks for the question. It's funny that this question is being asked because it reminds me a lot of 2016, right? We were asking what would happen with this election? Why is this election so consequential? And I think since, Trump got into office in the past 4 years, it's almost like every day we've kind of seen all of these fears and these concerns come true, right? We've seen a regression on so many issues across the board in terms of our environment and, keeping our water clean and the air we breathe clean, healthcare and the continued attacks on Affordable Care Act. With regard to our student loan debt crisis, the growing student loan debt crisis. And then as Dr. Samuel talked about just the pandemic response, that's kind of like the most glaring issue right now, and how that's brought about the worst economic situation for our country since the Great Depression. So I think this election is important, not just for our community, but for all communities and demographics that are like us, underserved communities that are kind of forgotten a lot of the times, to really end the chaos at the federal government, to move our country forward and to really restore competent leadership back into the White House. And I think Biden and Harris really, they are those leaders.
Malofa Taitia. We're going to take it up to Washington, bringing it to you, Mane.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to be real honest. We're living in a really bad time right now where a lot of us are seeing the inequities that are around us since COVID started, right? And so COVID is only highlighting all of the issues when it comes to racial justice or climate justice or just getting by day with the jobs that we currently have. A lot of our PI families are suffering. We need to move forward in electing a president that sees all of our people and not just a certain percentage of America. And then I also want to speak upon my cutie pie community as well, my queer and transgender Pacific Islanders. Our transgender siblings are suffering and dying at high rates, and I need a president in the office who is going to not only fight for a certain part of America, but someone who is fighting for all of us. And that includes my cutie pie community. And I stand on the shoulders of my Indigenous brothers and sisters. And as Indigenous people of the Pacific, I also acknowledge the lands and the the things that we are reaping as well and that we benefit from, and also acknowledge the struggles of our Black siblings as well. So this is a vital time for all of us to really pull through in the polls and vote for change. And we can't just sit by and let this happen to our country. We have to vote for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mane. We're going to bring it back down to the Bay, over to Sister Verna, a veteran educator in San Francisco Unified. Why is this election important to our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that, and hearing everyone's very different viewpoints, but there's a lot of common themes within that. And I think the common theme that we can all talk about is, as you mentioned, the inequities of our people. And I'm going to just highlight, being in education for 34 years, being grounded and seeing the result of inaction or the result of, disparities. Dr. Samoa, I'm very interested to talk to you at some point, because health disparities does exist in the schools, and it still does until we have wellness programs, until we have, the basic needs of not just of our students, but of the community as well. So it's very real. This election representation matters, and you see all the folks here today. We're representing the community, and that's a good thing. The portal that is now, the rage that's happening, from the murders of, young people to advocacies, youth advocacies to climate change, as you mentioned. I was going to say Commissioner Patero, but yes, Commissioner Patero eventually, and just the hate speeches of our president. It's myriads and myriads of things that are just leveled on top of each other. So it's incumbent upon us as leaders to continue to advocate, and platforms like this will help our communities elect the right folks. And the right folks are Biden and Harris. The platforms that they outline are very clear, and they're very authentic to Pacific Islanders. From the White House, task force, leading, bringing Pacific Islanders on that level down to the grassroots level. So it's very important that we all vote. And, bringing it back to the we again, we have a history. We have a history of, not being invisible. We're visible now. We're visible now. And what we need to do to continue that is to vote.
Thank you, Sister Verna. And thank you so much for joining us, Sister Ruby. We're so happy you're with us. No, we're glad you're here. So please share with us why you believe this election is important to our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community.
Hi, sorry again for being late. Thanks for having me. I go off of, I'd like to piggyback off of everyone else, and of course Mane, who's also a cutie pie, a queer and transgendered Pacific Islander. The current administration doesn't support who we are and our lives and our livelihood, and there are many things that they're doing now that it doesn't support us. And what Biden stands for is I read about his policies for transgendered individuals as well, and that would help us a lot. So yeah.
Thank you all for sharing your wisdom. I think it's wonderful that we are able to enlighten our NHPI community and those who are not of our community tuning in. So I would like to give it back to my co-chair, Talavou Aumavae.
Thank you, Auntie Fo, and thank you everyone for those amazing responses. We're going to take a second question for all our panelists, and then we're going to go on a quick break. But that second question is, why do you think voting for the Biden-Harris ticket is in our community's best interest? These are concerns that very many people in our community have. They don't know why they should be voting for the left or for the Democratic platform, but we would like to see what you think those reasons are. Since we finished up with Washington, I'm going to throw it all the way back down to my homeland, Kukuwila, to American Samoa, to Kia Reed to get his response. Kia, what do you think voting for the Biden-Harris ticket is in our community's best interest?
Well, first off, I think they actually have plans for our community, right? They're not just staging these shows for the sake of tokenism. I think as U.S. territories, we're not often part of these national discussions that take place. It's only like when we have a disaster or, an economic crisis like we're seeing in Puerto Rico, where we do garner that kind of attention, at that level. And so I think the Biden and Harris team, really acknowledge these unique cultural barriers that we face as communities and communities that look like us, right? They acknowledge ensuring that these communities, these barriers are addressed so that we receive all the services that we need. And I think an example of this most recently was with the kind of the rollout of the small business administration funds, right? Amid the COVID with the CARES Act, we saw a lot of these corporations that were kind of hoarding millions and millions of dollars. And then we saw small businesses in communities such as ours, you know, they were kind of left in the dark, right? They had issues accessing these resources to the website because of cultural, you know, language barriers. They didn't have much guidance from the federal level, and a lot of them didn't even have internet. So I think Biden and Harris, they're more knowledgeable. They've taken the time to really engage our communities to understand these unique barriers that we face, and they've laid out solutions to address them so that the people who deserve these resources get them. Thanks.
Exactly. I 100% agree. Thank you, Kia. We're going to go down to Southern California to Dr. Reynald Samoa. Why do you believe it's in our community's best interest to vote for the Democratic platform and for Biden-Harris this November?
Well, you know, like Tia said, there's a plan, you know, and it's one that fits what we need now acutely and what we need in the long run. You know, it's a tough time right now. We just lost our dog. So we're in the warning zones for evacuation for the fires. So the animals have come down off of the mountain, and one of our little ones were attacked and died over the weekend. And on the same day that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Supreme Court Justice, passed away as well. And it is really difficult to mourn in this time, in this pandemic. And so you look for things to give you hope. There is a cone in the California forest that belongs to a tree that is tightly bound. And when the cone comes in contact with immense heat, as in the case of like it's about to get burned, the cone opens up and releases its seeds into the ground, right? So that when the fire burns through and the tree eventually dies, the seeds are in the ground to start again. That's the hope that we're hoping comes from this loss, you know, this loss of justice, this loss of our environment, this loss of our loved ones. You know, the hundreds and hundreds of Pacific Islanders that have died from COVID-19 was preventable. You know, we just got word from a group that's trying to seek help for funerals. You know, one Marshallese community had 9. They lost 9. You know, with just recently, and you know that's those of us who grew up the Pacific Way know that our funeral customs are one of the greatest ways we show love for the roots, our ancestors, and our loved ones. And to have to deal with all of this in communities that already that have to try to find ways to protect themselves because they're essential workers. They don't have sick pay. They don't have hazard pay. You know, just this. It is our time of burn. It is our burning, and I'm hoping that with the election and the plans that have been put forth to help bring us to some form of social justice, better than it was now. Those are the hopes I hang on to.
Thank you, Dr. Samoa. I love that analogy, and definitely, we are in a time of burning. Let's work our way up the coast here. We'll come here to the Bay Area, to Professor Patero. Why do you think it's in our community's best interest to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket?
Well, in addition to what Dr. Samoa was saying as well, and the other panelists, I also think that with the Biden-Harris ticket in the White House, Kamala Harris is going to be the very first vice president or president in our country to be a first generation immigrant. Barack Obama was a first generation on his father's side, but his mother was born here in Kansas. So she understands the plight of an immigrant, being here, being bused to school, as she talked about in the debate stage. So she understands those of us who are immigrants and trying to get an education. I think that's fundamentally important. I know that we have so few of our people who go to college, graduate from college. In the almost over 20 years that I've been teaching, I can count on one hand the number of Pacific Islanders who have been in my class, and 2 of them were relatives of mine. So I think the Biden-Harris ticket, the Biden-Harris administration will really focus on educational equity. And I think that'll really benefit our community, because we also come from a community where we're collective, right? Everybody helps each other, and we focus on work because there's a lot of money there. But if we focus on education, the comeback is exponential. So we need to really encourage our children to consider college as an option, or if you want to go into entrepreneurship, look at vocational studies, career technical education. And I think coming back to K through 12, as hopefully our board member here, Castro, will help with us, will help as in terms of K through 12 education and forging a path through career technical education, so our students will be career ready when they graduate from high school, and also academically prepared if they want to go into the universities. And I think a Biden-Harris administration will ensure that, especially because Betsy DeVos won't be there anymore. So I think that'll really benefit our people.
Thank you, Professor. And now we're going to move up to Washington, and we will start off with Sister Ruby. Why do you think it's in our community's best interest to vote for this ticket?
So I'm just going to go back to what Dr. Raymond was saying about it's about being, or I'm sorry, to Kamala Harris, where she's relatable to us, where she's both her parents are first generation, and that's something I can relate to too. Like most people in our community can relate to, and then that just how she has our best interests at heart. Like she's looking at the looking glass from our perspective as well, knowing that our cultures and traditions, they matter as well. Yeah, I guess that's one good aspect to look at. And then of course.
Thank you so much. Let's see, we'll bring it back to the Bay Area, and I will throw it off to Verna. Do you mind sharing with us why do you think our community should be voting for the left? Looks like we may have lost Verna. That's totally fine. We can come back at another time. I will go to the Hawaii Senator, Kahele. Do you mind letting us know why do you believe it's in our community's best interest to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket?
You know, it's so important that we vote for this ticket. It's so important that we vote Democrat. Why? Because we are the party that fights for working class people. We are the party that fights for blue collar workers, for people to collectively unionize and organize. You know, we fight for those that have been left behind. We fight for the middle class. We fight for immigrants, for LGBTQ inclusion, for those that don't have health care, for those that do have pre-existing conditions. We fight for the disabled and the poor. That's why we need people to support the Biden-Harris ticket across this country. You know, time and time again, the Democratic Party has proven to be the responsible steward for our economy. I'm 46 years old, and just in my lifetime, the Democratic Party has had to fix the reckless actions of the Republican Party at least 3 times during 3 different recessions. And we're going to do so again under the Biden-Harris administration starting in 2021. You know, it's so important we do that because we need to create more high-paying jobs. We need to protect services for the elderly. Here in Hawaii, we call them our kupuna, our most cherished resources, so that they can have Medicare and Social Security. that we can expand access to quality healthcare. We need to invest in a stable middle class. And so it's very, very important that we do that. You know, the Obama-Biden administration appointed more AAPI judges than all previous administrations. And President Biden will, I know, strengthen the Pacific Island Task Force that was talked about earlier, that aims to ensure that not just Native Hawaiians, but Pacific Islanders and those communities are at the table for important policy decisions that are going to reshape the future of this country. That is why it is so important that we support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 41 days.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, in 41 days. This is quickly approaching, and we need to ensure that our community is getting out to vote. Let's see. Verna, unfortunately, hasn't been able to rejoin us, so we are going to throw it off to our last panelist for this question, and then we'll go off to break. And that panelist is back in Washington. Mane, why do you think our community should vote for the Biden-Harris ticket?
Well, you know, when I'm thinking about the future of our country and the globe, climate change is something that's really big in our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities. And I'm not just speaking about our Pasifika countries that are suffering currently at the hands of climate change, but also the disparities, the health disparities that come from climate justice, injustice, from pollution in the air of many communities of BIPOC people. And we need to really think about who is running a campaign that is thinking about the future of our people, right? And the ones that are affected by climate change the most are our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders and our countries back home. Now, it is very important and vital that all of our Pasifika people come together because the future of our future generations is at stake. And the Biden and Harris ticket is the one that is going to really create change, sustainable change for future generations. And when I work with youth, I want to make sure those youth have a future to look forward to. And the way we're heading now with the current administration, we're not going to have a future to look forward to if oils and gases are still being used. So vote Biden and Harris, y'all.
Thank you so much, Mane. And that is it looks like that will be our last panelist for this question. We will come back and reconvene after the short break. We have 2 more questions for our panelists before we go into, actually, let me backtrack. It looks like Verna is just rejoining us. Let's see if we can catch her before hopping into our break. Verna, can you hear us, my dear?
I can now. Technical difficulties. This is why I do mindfulness.
Oh, no worries at all.
I can now.
But thank you again for rejoining. But our question that our panelists were all answering for us while you dropped out was, why do you believe it's in our community's best interest to vote for the Biden-Harris ticket?
Okay, I'll be short. I think one of the things that's really important is who the leader is. And when you look at the two, and it's very clear that leadership is Biden and Harris. You know, for me, what's important in leadership, some of the characteristics are trust, compassion, lived experiences, and hope. And this is clearly what Biden and Harris gives us. They give us a clear platform of what they will do for our NHPI community. And the plan is short-term and long-term. It's inclusive of our community. And there's definitely lived experiences with Kamala and Biden has done over years in the Senate and in the Obama administration. So I am, it's a no-brainer there. The second thing I want to call out is, again, equity. Just equity in terms of, again, you know, just the platforms that are laid out is really does call action for our communities, and it's something that yeah, it's something that Biden and Harris are. There's no question. no doubt that they're the folks that our community needs to vote for.
Thank you, Verna. No, exactly. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a short break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to have our panelists answer 2 more questions on their perspective, their experiences. And then after that section, we'll move right into some more policy-based questions and focus in the platform that Biden and Harris are promoting and what they'll do to advocate for our community. So once again, please sit back and enjoy soothing sounds from our very own Tama Pasifika Benjamin Asu and his bandmates from Southern California. They're called the Top Shelf Brass Band. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Big shout out to everyone throwing the event. This year's important. Make sure and vote. Go to the polls. Go to the polls. All y'all in the younger generation. Everyone, I'm sure you felt voiceless. Being poly in this country, you might feel like you're not heard politically. You know, we can fix that as a group. We can fix that. By going to the polls.
By going to the polls.
By going to the polls. Get your vote in. Get heard. That's it. I don't know. I'm out. Deuces.
Welcome back, everyone. You are all tuned in this evening with a wonderful group of panelists from our Oceanic community. And it is hosted by our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander affinity group for Biden and Harris. So we were going to move the program along. And the question for our panelists is, what is one issue you believe our community should be thinking of when they are casting their ballots, and why? We're going to start off with Professor Ana Petero.
When our wonderful host Manūfou said at the very beginning about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, our notorious RBG, having passed away this last week, I think one thing that we have to think about, especially as women, Pacific Island women, is the Supreme Court. Right? Our healthcare is at stake. Here is on the ballot. 20 million people are on the verge of losing their healthcare if Donald Trump is reelected. Our healthcare rights as women, reproductive rights, and our autonomy as women is on the ballot this fall. So for Pacific Islanders, I want you to think about, as Dr. Samoa said, it's so hard to find hope, but that is our hope, and that is with the Biden-Harris administration, we have over 300 million people. We should have more Supreme Court justices. So the Republicans can cheat as much as they want. We have alternatives. And something I want you to think about when you go to the ballot, think about that Supreme Court justice pick and what that's going to mean to us in terms of women, Pacific Island women. Many of us are the breadwinners in our families, right? Many of us are caregivers. Think about your healthcare and think about education. Think about climate change and how we, as I said before, are an endangered species. So those are the things I want you to think about, and that all comes from the Supreme Court. So think about that when you go out and vote. Cast your vote on November 3rd. If you can mail your vote in, we're going to talk about that later, do that and be prepared for everything and go out and vote.
Thank you, Professor. We're going to go up to Washington, bringing it over to you, Mane. If you could share your perspective and elaborate.
Hello, everyone. I think an issue that that really speaks to me, just as a cutie pie, a queer and transgender Pacific Islander, I'm speaking to all of my cutie pies out there who don't typically vote. This is our time to step up. With the epidemic of the killings and murderings of our Black and brown trans people in the United States, just because we're Pacific Islander does not mean we don't have targets on our trans siblings' backs as Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders. We need to step up and vote for a ticket that truly supports the voices of our cutie pie community, our LGBTQ community, and really does care about the well-beings of our human rights, and actually does fight for our basic human rights. This administration has proven time and time again that they do not care about our LGBTQ community, that they don't see us as humans, and that they don't see us as people who deserve human rights. And so I am begging all of our cutie pies out there who are watching this today to get out and go vote, because when it comes to our community, our cutie pie community, it is hard for us to fight for visibility in our own Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community. It is time to step up and be visible, and to be brave enough to vote and be brave enough to speak out on the disparities, not only in the United States, but in our own communities as well. So be brave enough to vote, and be brave enough to understand who is actually up to bat for you.
Thank you, Mane. We're going to go over to 684, take it over to Tia. If you could tell us what is one issue you believe our community should be thinking of when they are casting their ballots, and why?
I would say elections have consequences, and I think this election, no matter how many times the current administration tries to kind of deny or downplay what's going on around us, it's literally a matter of life and death. We're lucky here in American Samoa to not have any COVID cases. However, for the past 6 to 7 months, we've had about 400 to 500 families that have been stuck across the US because our borders have been closed in March. So we're literally seeing a lot of these Pacific Island countries within our region that have been, able to repatriate their residents back to their home countries from other countries like New Zealand, who've been able to, really respond to the coronavirus more effectively. And I think if we had that type of leadership, going back to what everyone's been talking about, if we had that leadership at the federal level that really acknowledged and appreciated science and facts, I don't think we'd be in the situation that we're in. Also, as U.S. territories, we've kind of always looked to the U.S., the federal government as, a country that provides us with these guidances and, resources. And I'm not feeling like we have that. And I think Biden and Harris will definitely bring that type of leadership that we need as a country and also as U.S. territories.
Thank you, Tia. We're going to come to Southern California, to Dr. Samoa. If you could share your perspective.
What issue? There's so many issues. I think thinking of it from the Pacific perspective, we take care of others better than we take care of ourselves, right? And so this election is your ability to take care of those who you say are important, your family, your community, your church. These are ways you can try to improve all the social determinants. The reason why health has become so glaringly obvious for Pacific Islanders in regards to health disparities. Before COVID, it was cancer and diabetes and chronic disease. And after COVID, it will be something else. And the reason for that is because all of the social determinants of health are weighed against us, And so I'll give you an example. In the county of Nevada, Clark County, Pacific Islanders, Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders had the highest rates of COVID-19 back in mid to late April. And then they stopped reporting it. They combined the Pacific Islander data with Asian data, and there was no more disparity. And so they hid our disparity in the reporting of their data so that nobody would know. And that's what happens. That's what happens when you don't vote, is you give up that voice. You give up that voice to say, hey, that's wrong. You shouldn't be hiding our data. And at least in Nevada, they were reporting it once, And Maricopa County in Arizona, where there's a large Pacific Island community, they're not even reporting it. But I will tell you, every possible profile for a hotspot, for a Pacific Islander hotspot, is in Maricopa County, and it's in Clark County, and it's in Indiana, and it's in Oklahoma, and it's in Texas. But the reason why there's no mention of the hotspots in those areas is because those states and those counties do not report Pacific Islander data. Those who are most affected are voiceless, and this is how it will be for education, for business, if we don't turn things around, And so, yeah, you don't want to vote for yourself because you say you can't tell the difference between two parties. Okay, but at least look to see who you might help by going to vote. Your college kids who are trying to pay off their student loans or even trying to get into college, all of those will matter. So I would press upon our community to use those specific values and to look deep within them and ask them which one of these candidates, and I think it's Biden and Harris, would adhere better to our Pacific values.
Thank you, Dr. Samoa. That's a great point, looking beyond ourselves. Absolutely looking beyond ourselves. Coming up to San Francisco, to Sister Verna, if you could share what is one issue you believe our community should be thinking of when they are casting their ballots and why?
Yes, it's hard to follow Dr. Samoa because I tend to agree with you in terms of that. I know people vote on the issues that matter to them. They vote on what's going on in their life. They vote on their family. They vote for issues that pertain to their community. So I can't say what it is for them, but certainly it's the introspection, and it's also knowing what's going on in the community. Climate change comes to mind, right? It's a defining issue of our time, right? It's a defining moment of climate change. Education, we all know how important fundamentally, primary education is, and the Biden team can address that through, early universal childcare, amongst others, all the way up into the colleges. So education is important. We all know that. We know that healthcare is for our Pacific Islander communities. That's paramount to health and well-being through the rest of their life. But I want our folks to consider back what Dr. Samoa mentioned in terms of, first of all, think about your ancestors. Think about what got you here and who you are, okay? Think about, your community and yourself, okay? And then ask yourself, is the present administration getting you what you want, okay? Are you at a place where you need to be? Are you getting those resources, okay? Are those basic needs met, or are you getting the same resources as those in privileged racial groups? So we came here for the American dream. Our families brought us here, and we're lucky to be here. There's no better country than America to be. The Biden-Harris team will make this country great. So I would just go back to considering who we are as people, and look at your communities and yourself.
Thank you, Verna. Sister Ruby, could you share why you think that, and what you believe in as far as what our community should be thinking of when they're casting their ballots this election season?
So I would like to switch to like my mahuahine, my fa'afafine, my fakalite, like my ancestors out there that are living in the U.S. because Trump has banned us from joining the military and openly serving in the military. Like, these are things that Biden is working to fix. And, but also like our healthcare is in danger too. Like these are things that affect us. We're a minority of a minority. And then, so these are things that the Biden administration is working on, and I feel like we should support it wholeheartedly. Like, that's our life on the line. And that's where I stand with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Ruby. Honorable Senator Kahele, if you could share with us.
Sure, thank you so much. Verna started to talk about it. She touched on it a little bit. I think one of the most important issues that affects this community, our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community, is climate change. Climate change is one of the most important things out there. And, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but we're not entitled to facts. And the fact of the matter is, this president is a climate change denier. He pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement. Why? Because he would rather fight for big oil and the Koch brothers than fight for our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander communities and for our planet. 9 of the 10 hottest years on record have just been in the last decade. We know that climate change is real. We know that we need to reduce our carbon emissions. We know that destructive weather is getting more common. It seems like every week there's a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. We know that Pacific islands in the Pacific are disappearing. We know that there is sea level rise across our islands. We know that coral is bleaching because of rising sea level temperatures. These are facts. They are not political positions. The longer we delay solutions, the more expensive they get. You may not live in the Pacific. You may live on the continent. But I tell you what, you have ohana and you have family that live all throughout the Pacific, and they are affected by climate change. And that is, if not the number one reason why our communities should get out and vote for the Biden-Harris ticket, because they're not going to deny that climate change is real. And they're going to come with real solutions to address climate change that affect our planet. Mahalo.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to turn it over to my co-chair, Talavou Aumavae, for our next question.
Thank you, Antifo, and thank you, everyone. Our next question is, with the expected rise of mail-in voting in this election cycle, what is one reassuring advice you would give our community to ease their concerns about mail-in voting? I'm going to start by throwing it off to Professor Patero, because I understand she's going to have to be leaving us with the world that we live in now, having multiple Zooms. We appreciate you and your time for being here, but I'll have you answer first because I know you're in a hurry.
Thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it being part of this wonderful panel. Just to assure us, we send checks out every day, right? Many of our people are old school. They still write checks and deal with credit cards. So you send out your check to the mail. In the mail, it gets to whoever it needs to get to. You get medicine in the mail. That it comes to you. So rest assured that the United States Postal Service has worked ever since its inception. It is part of our Constitution. It has to be there, and you can rest assured that if you send your ballot, send it in early as possible. It'll get there. So if you don't feel comfortable with that, look out in your community. Are there drop boxes? Can you actually go to the registrar of voters and drop your ballot there if you don't feel comfortable? Those are the three options. As soon as you get it, fill it out. Make sure you know what's going on too, right? And fill it out and send it back as soon as possible. If you have polling places where you can drop it off, you don't feel comfortable with USPS, do that. And if you can drop it off at the registrar of voters, do that as well. But rest assured, the USPS has worked for us, worked for you all this time, right? If you haven't had any complaints before, why would you have complaints? And don't listen to what Donald Trump is saying. What he says is what he's doing. He votes by mail. His entire family votes by mail. So please don't listen to him. You get your ballot, fill it out, vote. Thank you very much for the panel. Thank you for inviting me. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much.
Aloha. Thank you, Senator. I hope to see you and the Biden-Harris administration.
Aloha.
Thank you so much again, Professor. Take care, stay well, and we'll stay in touch. Next, I'd like to go up real quickly to Washington once again and get Sis Ruby. What's some advice and reassurance you want to give to our community with the rise of mail-in voting for this election?
I mean, she said it. You can mail everything else, but you're going to be nervous about a ballot? It's a conspiracy theory. Don't let it get to you. He's trying to scare us from not voting. Send in those ballots. I mean, if it has a stamp, you should be good. I mean, correct address, make sure that, you know, or reach out to someone if you need help for that too. Like, hey, reach out to me. I'll help you. Like, fill it out and send it in. But don't be discouraged by that. Like, it isn't something to not vote over. Yeah, send in your ballots. You'll be fine.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ruby. Exactly. Let's go down to Southern California, Dr. Samoa.
I've been voting by mail since 2000. So I don't have any problems with that. And, you know, I would defer my time to everyone here in regards to advice in that. And let me just make sure everyone knows there's not a person on here that I didn't know before the webinar. You know, the Pacific community, we know our leaders, and all of you lead. Ruby, I seen your Instagram. State Senator Kahele, I'm a big fan. I've been so for a couple years now. Mane, I'm ready to take a dance class. Tia is my Facebook guru, and Berna and Manfo and Talavou, you guys are always educating me. You know, I'm a geek, I'm a med geek. That's my silo, and you guys push the borders of social awareness and social consciousness that allows the rest of us to understand very adaptly. My only one thing is, I don't think the big obstruction will be fear of mail. It will be fear of change. So it is imperative, all of you millennials, all of you Gen Xers who understand voting by mail, it is imperative that you get your family signed up to do so, that you know that aren't going to do it, you know. And so, because the process is unfamiliar, and sometimes when it comes to making decisions, if you have to put any effort into changing the way you do something, people aren't likely to do it. So you have to go to those change agents, those very annoying, loud, persistent people who want change in your family. You guys need to go out and you need to start making sure your uncles, your aunties, your mom and dad, your grandma and grandpa fill in the, have a form and send in their mail-in registration. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samoa. Exactly. Let's go back to the Bay Area with Verna. What's one advice you'd like to give our community?
Yeah, similarly, it's worked. It's been proven over the years. Voting by mail is actually very secure, despite what our president says. But it is unheard of that a sitting president has tried to kneecap the Postal Service. With less than 40 days to vote, voters can secure it more by contacting the Secretary of State. There's safe, security, and ease of voting steps there before the election. But just don't worry. The scare tactics is nothing new from the president. There's a lot of fact checks that you can look into. But with this question right here, it's clear, it's simple, vote. What the question should be is how to get out our folks to vote. The Postal Service is quite safe. Thank you for the question.
Of course, thank you as well for your response and your advice to our community. We have 3 more panelists to go through with this question, and then we'll move on to policy questions from the public. Let's see, we'll go down to the state of Hawaii to Senator. What's one advice you'd like to give our people?
I just would like to reiterate what everybody said. Don't let Donald Trump insult your intelligence. Vote early, vote by mail. Voting is, one of the most basic fundamental rights of being an American and being in this country. And, I'll just keep it short. Vote, get your ballot in early, and encourage others around you and your families and your ohana to get in their ballots as well. And make your vote count, and don't delay and send it in as soon as possible.
Thank you, Senator. Now we'll go down to American Samoa, back to Kia.
Ditto to what everyone else said. I think they covered it pretty well. Have a plan to vote, vote early, not Islander time. We're kind of infamous for doing things very last minute. We can't afford that. We can't afford to do that this election. Check with your local election office, find out how you can request those ballots and send them in. And then also organize amongst your families. Everybody's talked about that, right? Reaching out to your uncles, your aunties, your cousins, remind them of the importance of this election. And beyond just voting and leading up to the election day, I think we can do a lot to support other Democrats as well. In addition to, the Biden-Harris ticket, of course, support Dems up and down the ballot. There's so many ways we can donate online and also volunteer from wherever we are.
Thank you, Kia. And then off to Mane. Do you have any other additions you'd like to add on?
Everyone said everything pretty much. I've been voting. I'm a millennial myself, so I've been voting by mail and only by mail, and that's the only thing I've ever known. So I had the responsibility to make sure that my mom's ballot came in the mail as well. And so whatever you do, all of our millennials and all of our people who are living in multi-generational homes, get our elders registered and then make sure that their ballots are coming through the mail. I had no problem. And if you do not trust the U.S. Postal Service, in Washington State, we have 500 drop-off boxes around the state. So you can find and locate, just go to one of your county's websites and they'll tell you exactly where your ballot drop box is located. And that's how I do it. I don't mail it in. I fill it out, put it in the envelope, and drop it at the drop box, and it's done. So I just want everybody to stay safe out there. COVID-19 does exist. please make sure that you guys are smart about the way you vote. But don't worry about that. We already know that the administration is incapable of telling the truth. So let's get out there and vote.
Thank you so much, Wanda, and thank you again, everyone, for taking the time to provide us with some wonderful feedback and advice to our community, especially with the current rise of mail-in voting. And yes, I will second what everyone just said, that it's safe, especially with the rise of COVID and the COVID era we're living in now. If you have doubts of standing in the polls and waiting, by all means, mail in your ballot. I'm still considering myself if I'm going to volunteer at the polls, and my only concern is my own safety. But I'm trying to ensure that I do everything myself to ensure that our community gets out there and votes. And thank you for all that you guys are doing to do that. Now we're going to shift gears. For the next portion of our agenda is the public Q&A. So when we first put out the announcement of our event, we wanted to ask some of the public to send in questions. The window for submission of these questions were Monday evening. I do realize there are some in the Q&A currently with active viewers with us on this Zoom. We'll get to those if we have time, but it looks like we're a little bit ahead of schedule, so we might be able to cover those. But if not, we are covering the main 4 topics that we saw most concern from our community, and those topics and issues is, once again, climate change, education, healthcare, and immigration. We're going to spend 7 minutes in each issue, and there's once again 1 question per issue, and this is a more collaborative discussion. So we might not call on a specific, we may or may not call on a specific panelist. We encourage that you all unmute and let us know what your thoughts are, and speak to what the platform is that the Biden-Harris campaign is trying to implement if they win this November. So beginning with climate change, I'd like to start off by addressing this question specifically to Senator Kahele, since everyone has acknowledges and understands the challenges that we face with climate change, especially our NHPI community. But I'd like to get your feedback, or I'd like to ask a question that was submitted by our from the public regarding climate change, and see if you can speak to it and provide us insight on what the campaign's platform is. So the question is, Senator, and once the Senator answers the question, by all means, I welcome any other panelists to join in on the conversation. Once again, this is collaborative. We're going to spend 7 minutes on each issue. So climate change, our question that was submitted from the public, as multiple studies have shown, and many of you have acknowledged that here this evening, that many South Pacific Island nations contribute very little to greenhouse gas emissions, but are disproportionately affected by global warming. What is the Biden administration's plan on addressing climate change? Once again, I'd like to hand it off first to Senator Kahele from Hawaii.
Well, thank you for the question. I mean, just like you said, we contribute very little to greenhouse gas emissions, and but reap the devastating effects of greenhouse gas emissions and climate change in the Pacific. You know, we should join the Biden-Harris ticket in supporting the concept of a Green New Deal. And what does that mean? That means expanding clean, renewable, and zero emission energy sources. It means creating new high-paying jobs in new skilled workforces that can contribute to clean energy. It includes improving our nationwide infrastructure and setting clear goals toward carbon neutrality, and that we can adequately fund those different technology advancements that and climate sciences that contribute to addressing that. We should absolutely join the Biden-Harris administration in rejoining and adhering to this country's Paris Climate Change Agreement pledge that was made under the Obama administration. That will result in solutions to the climate crisis that can originate from a not just American approach, but a global multilateral approach of world leaders and nations. The Paris Climate Agreement it was absolutely monumental in that the world's top 2 emitters of greenhouse gas emissions. China and the United States of America reduce those emissions and contribute to climate change advancement. And so that is one of the things that we should support, and I'm proud that the Biden-Harris administration supports that.
Good. I like to chime in. Thank you for that. Just in terms of, again, the platform of the importance of having voice from the NHPI and the administration wanting to create a task force of the people, for the people. Okay, so that they know the issues in the community. So then they're able to drill down and create these programs and practices and structures for our people to address climate change and things like that. But I also want to talk about education. The Biden-Harris platform, in terms of the education, they'd like to triple the Title I funding. Title I goes to schools serving a high number of children from low economic families. Okay, that's a lot of our families in the BIPOC area, our Pacific Islander area, in urban cities and metropolitan cities. So to do that, what that would do, it would create programs again. I'm in a district, Alameda Unified School District, and they've done a wonderful job in bringing green. They've got a green award for doing recycling. They've got, they're doing environmental justice and environmental programs within the schools, but it's not all schools. We need it at all schools, and we need it at not just the secondary level, at the K level, the younger years. So education funding from Biden will help us bring those programs, and then also from the administration understanding our communities.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Verna. Would any other of our panelists like to contribute to the current topic at hand of climate change and speak to the platform of the Biden-Harris administration and to your own views of and understanding of that platform and proposal? If everyone's in agreement, that's totally fine. We can move on. But Kia, I saw you unmuted. By all means,
Sorry, I mean, I think they, Senator Kaikahele and Verna pretty much covered, and I just wanted to kind of talk about climate change just really on a more simpler level, not so policy specific, but I think the contrast between, the current administration in terms of climate change and, what Biden-Harris plans represent is just stark and totally opposite, right? We have the president that's calling climate change a hoax. And then we have, Biden and Harris really having an economic plan, to build back better, but within the lens of the environment, right? Looking at equity, as we talked about in this environment, having specific goals, net zero emissions by 2050 and a clean energy sector by 2030. So, I mean, I think the choice is just pretty obvious. We have a climate change denier and someone who's calling it a hoax, and we have a team that really takes climate change seriously and has plans and goals to achieve that.
Thank you for contributing to that portion, Kia. And yes, for someone that lives like Senator in the back in the island of Hawaii, and also yourself, Kia, living in American Samoa, you guys definitely see the impact of global warming more so than and some of us here in the mainland. But of course, with this year, with the wildfires, we definitely can see that the growing concern of global warming here within the west coast of the United States. So thank you. Anyone else want to contribute? If not, we will be moving on to our next portion here. Perfect. I take no unmutes as a go. So I'm referring back to education. Verna, I probably addressed this question to you, and then anyone else can add on is, you spoke a little bit about the Biden-Harris administration's work to improve education, especially with expanding Title I funding. Do you mind speaking more into their platform and their plans for higher education? And by all means, once Verna responds, once again, just unmute and contribute to the conversation. Verna, you're currently still muted.
Oh, am I okay?
You just muted yourself. Oh, now you're good. No, no. One more
Am I
time.
good?
No more. Don't leave. Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Biden-Harris team plans on providing 2 years of community college and other high quality training without debt. That's so important for our NHPI community. Also, their plans is also to double the Pell Grants that's currently given. Again, that helps our community because we know the cost of education rises year to year, increasing our middle class Pacific Islander. On top of that, the Biden-Harris team plans on having the loan payments for students, which will, on the repayment program. So this will definitely help our Pacific Islander groups attend and go through college.
Thank you, Verna. Let's see here. Would anyone else like to contribute? And I totally agree. Oh, thank you, Senator. Go ahead.
Sure, I'll chime in. You know, I had the honor to serve as the chair of the Senate, Hawaii State Senate Higher Education Committee for 2 years, and that managed the 7 community colleges that Verna just talked about and the 3 University of Hawaii campuses. And one thing I would like to add is that soon to be President Biden's position is that he has proposed to make public colleges and universities tuition free for all families with incomes below $125,000. So I think the combination of debt-free college for community colleges and vocational and critical skills training programs and public universities, 4-year colleges, tuition free for those under incomes below $125,000 is a great thing. You know, he's also talked about supporting colleges and universities that play vital roles in their communities, not just the NHPI communities, but historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities. Let's not forget our Alaska Native brothers and sisters, American Indian brothers and sisters out there, and of course our Asian American and Pacific Islander serving institutions. So those are some things that the Biden-Harris administration has committed to in the terms of higher education in this country.
Thank you, Senator. Let's see. Let's give a few seconds for anyone else to unmute if they'd like to join. If not, we can move on. Okay, perfect. We're flying through these topics because then we can get an opportunity to probably cover some of the questions we're receiving tonight from the live audience that we have with us here on Zoom. Perfect. Let's see. So our next topic is healthcare. I'd like to address this question to specifically Dr. Reed, Reynald Samoa, and then everyone else is welcome to chime in. And Dr. Samoa, what will Biden-Harris do to ensure affordable access to healthcare for all Americans?
So their plan to continue the Affordable Care Act, but also expand coverage. You know, there is talk of expanding Medicaid. It's huge because a lot of our communities, such as the Kofa community from Micronesia, a lot of them do not have coverage because of the rollback on Medicaid coverage that no longer covers them. And it is the height of injustice because the Kofa community has migrated over the decades, but in 2000, they started migrating in very large numbers. And they were going to areas of the country, such as the South and the Midwest. And they were supporting industries like agricultural industries, Tyson chicken, like there is in Arkansas. And these industries heavily depend on these communities. So they come here with the promise of working and helping America thrive. And yet they're told they don't deserve insurance in their process to do so. So, you know, the issues of health when it comes to Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders is an issue of justice. And so I see no justice coming from the Trump plan. I actually see less coverage and worsening social determinants of health, which means wherein for a lot more glaring numbers in regards to not just COVID, but in other diseases that are heavily dependent on these determinants, such as cancer and diabetes. And so, to me, it's somewhat of a no-brainer, and you know, it's very difficult sometimes for our communities to sort of see what the president or the House of Representatives or the Senate has anything to do with their lives. Here it is. This is it. You know, there is not one person that's not touched by healthcare in this country. You know, and so if you want our elderly to be covered and covered well, if you want you know, prevention programs to be put in place because we've redesigned how we deliver care, then the roots are done with Biden and Harris's plan, you know. And I know there's a lot of progressives out there that don't think their plan is enough, but it is the start, you know. It is where you grow from, because the Trump plan is to go farther and farther away from justice.
Thank you, Dr. Samoa.
I'd just like to add,
Yes, please.
I'd just like to add, I'm a lifetime fitness and health teacher, educator in the schools, and I believe in healthcare, and I believe in physical activity. And Biden-Harris team, they want to expand, as Dr. Samoa said, the mental health services and community health centers. They want to double the federal investment in community health centers, expanding access to high quality healthcare. And on top of that is access. You know, just we have some folks with language barriers, so they're going to, you know, help with that so that our peoples can navigate the system. That's important as well. And Dr. Small again mentioned about healthcare in terms of the seniors and different populations. The wellness centers should be in all the schools, and you know, again, the Title I funds and this ramping up and expansion of health services is needed now during COVID and after COVID. Our peoples have come from traumatized times, intergenerational trauma. So Biden and Harris team, they know this, and they're bringing people together like us to address these concerns. So Biden and Harris is the ticket.
Yeah, this current administration has tried numerous times to roll back rights. The cutie pie, for example, there is a push to make it legal for providers to not treat you because you're of a certain orientation, you know. And so that's just the gateway. That is the gateway to say, I don't want to treat you because I'm different from you. And that's not an America that we want to be in.
I'd like to add in my 2 cents as well. You know, again, I go back to, don't let Donald Trump insult your intelligence. You know, the ACA isn't perfect, but it would be absolutely foolish to repeal it. And by repealing it, we will put insurance companies back in charge of our healthcare system, allowing them to deny coverage to people with pre-existing conditions, to drop your coverage if you become sick, to charge women more than men. You know, I support, you know, Joe Biden's plan to expand access to affordable quality healthcare. And it really has. You know, the ACA, Obamacare was always the start. It was never the end. And we need to continue to provide healthcare for all in this country. The ACA has provided millions of Americans free access to preventative services like checkups. You want to talk about women, mammograms. It's cut the cost for seniors for their prescriptions, allowed millions and millions of young people to stay on their parents' healthcare plans. If we elect Donald Trump again, if we allow him to confirm someone to the United States Supreme Court and give it a 6-3 majority, they will destroy the Affordable Care Act, and it will hurt this country and the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community that has now and has access to affordable health care through the ACA.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Verna, thank you as well, Senator. Let's see. Okay. We will move on. It doesn't look like anyone else from our panelists will be contributing to the issue of healthcare. Our last issue at hand, one of the biggest concerns our community had is immigration. And our question, this will be addressed to anyone. Please, by all means, if you'd like to answer or add on, unmute yourself and contribute to the discussion at hand. And the question for immigration that we got from the public is, what will the Biden-Harris administration do to protect and assist undocumented immigrants already living in the United States and also protect DACA?
I mean, I'll just jump out there and say that, you know, we need common sense immigration reform in this country. You know, we need an immigration system that values freedom, opportunity, security. We need to reject policies based on race, religion, and nationality. We need to expand legal immigration and provide achievable paths so that people can achieve that status. You know, we absolutely need to protect DACA. Those are those dreamers and their families that came to this country, that work in this country, that contribute to our economy. And, you know, we are a nation of immigrants. You know, we are a multi-ethnic, multi-racial country that is becoming more diverse every single day. And we absolutely have to, you know, think about, you know, that message, right? Bring me your poor, your tired, your huddled masses yearning to be free. What happened to that? Where is that? We need to get back to those principles of welcoming everyone and figuring out a way so that everyone can come to our country and succeed and excel.
Thank you, Senator. Let's see what else. Oh,
I'll be short on this. I just thank you, Senator. That was well said. Donald Trump has waged an unrelenting assault on our values, our history as a nation of immigrants. He has. He's wrong. Biden and Harris will stand up to him. They're strong. They know the core of what America is about. They talk it. They live it. It's about equity and about immigrants. They'll protect our rights and create policies. And it's a war, but this war is about the vote. We need to get out and vote. We have 1.7 million Asians, Native Pacific Islanders, immigrants that are undocumented. Okay, Biden and Harris will protect the rights, you know, through the Dreamer program, through other programs, you know, expanded programs and reforms. So consider that. They are the best choice for us.
thank you so much, Verna. Let's see. Would anyone else from our panelists like to contribute? Okay, if not, we are, oh, Kia, I noticed that you unmuted. Would you like to?
Yeah, nothing lengthy. I just wanted to kind of add on to what they were saying. I think this issue of immigration is really also a moral one, right? We've seen this president that's completely dehumanized immigrants, has totally called them rapists and killers from the beginning. And I think also his policies have also followed suit, right? We've seen the separation of children to this day from their families who haven't been able to reunite with their own families. So I think even beyond just policies and what that might mean, we need leadership that is empathetic, that you know, that has those values and morals and cares about immigrants. You know, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
No worries at all. But thank you so much, Kia. If we don't have any other panelists, that is totally fine. We'll just, we are ahead of schedule. We'll go ahead and take in some questions from the the audience that we have. We have a few submitted. Therefore, if there are a few other people that were on the fence, if they wanted to ask a question, if we may not have time, now is your time to do so. Please, if you're watching if you have a question, please by all means, now is your time to submit it, and we'll get to it if we can. Let's see here. So a question from Davy Soman Lang is, I'm presuming this is just addressed to all the panelists, so whomever would like to enter, please by all means unmute. We're also, and the question is, we're also in the age of disinformation, as I'm seeing a lot across social media. What is your take on this? A lot of our NHPI folks are falling for false information, especially regarding healthcare and other vital resources or programs in the country.
I'm just going to be brief. Ever since this administration has been very apparent and important for me to start fact-checking everything. When you think about information and when it comes to you, I hope that our community just doesn't believe right away, right? We have to check the facts and go with the facts that is given, not just looking at random articles on social media and going with what you see. Because Facebook and Snapchat and all of these social media platforms are not good sources of news. So please fact check the information. I've had multiple family members message me on different issues that are going about and rumors that are going about, but I always remind the community to please understand where this information is coming from. Are they a reliable source? And if not, then try to find out where the real information is. But you have to educate yourself in order to make important decisions, especially decisions that really impact our future. So fact check always.
Thank you so much, Wanda. Exactly. Would anyone else on our panel like to make an addition to that?
You know, after seeing the election interference from foreign countries and bad actors in 2016, utilizing, you know, social media platforms that we all use every single day, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, you really need to be vigilant over these next, 6 weeks with what you start to see on your social media pages, because there's a lot of disinformation out there. There's a lot of paid for advertising out there that is trying to spread, rumors and just absolute total lies. And you just be very, very careful of the things that you find on social media. Just like Mane said, verify and make sure that you get factual information before making a informed decision, and do not believe what you read. Unfortunately, on Facebook and some of those social media sites. They're good for communicating with friends and family, but maybe not necessarily making a decision on who you should vote for the next president of the United States.
I would like to add to that. I think one thing that sets our Pacific Islander culture from others is that we are a community. And whether we're a community across the ocean or we have community all around us. So I think leaning on each other for that. And these folks that you see here on the internet are folks that I think, I don't want to speak for everyone, but for myself, you can call me. And if I don't know the answer, I'll find the answer. So find those trusted leaders, community. And you have elected officials who are your leaders that you trust. And and lean on them. While at the same time, I'm confident that the Biden-Harris team will look at Facebook and look at, safe, secure internet security, because this is rampant. Like Senator says, it's something that has to be addressed. But in the meanwhile, find those community folks that can help you find those answers.
Yeah, I think one of the one of the hardest things has been to try to get people to listen to and adhere to recommendations during this pandemic. And our Native Hawaiian Pacific Island community is no different from the rest of the country in that regards. We've realized that at a certain level, talking to people with information, you know, such as a talking head, the people that we can reach, we've reached, you know, and the people that aren't using sort of what you call logic or conventional modalities to make their decision, we're not reaching them, you know. For some reason, they're responding emotionally, and when you try to meet someone with logic that's responding emotionally, you don't get anywhere, you know. And it takes patience on our part to say, okay, what is it that you're really reacting to? What is the emotion that you're trying to convey to me? And how do we, you know, how do we go to the root level? There are those that don't want to listen to us. You know, there are those that, there was a disagreement a while back, and someone told me, okay, give me all these examples, but don't use any mainstream resources. You know, I was like, you mean like newspapers and medical journals? You don't want me to use any of those to make my argument or support my observations? And they said yes, you know. And we have to understand that there's those that, okay, got it. You are solid in your belief and you have absolutely no room to move. But there are so many of us that have been disenfranchised, that are pissed off, that those are the ones that we need to motivate to get out and register, you know, and say, hey, life sucks. You've been through a ton, you know, you can't work, you're at risk every day, and you have to deal with funerals. You're having trouble paying for your rent. You're having trouble paying for your utility bill. You don't know how you're going to make it through the next couple of months. There are more of us like that than there were 4 years ago, you know, and that's where I think the battle is still there, because like I said, in those two counties that I mentioned earlier in the evening, Clark County and Maricopa County, in Las Vegas, I mean in Nevada and in Arizona, those are the two most hotly contested swing counties in the nation. There is not a lot of Pacific Islanders registered in those two counties. And guess what? They're a hot spot. You know, like those places are hot spots for Pacific Islanders. So getting our communities engaged to fight COVID and registering them to vote so that they have the voice in the future, that's where I say, you know, a lot of our effort needs to start going to.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, everyone, for contributing to that discussion. Let's see. We don't have any other unmutes from our panelists, so let's move on to the next question here. From the audience, and their question is, it's from an anonymous attendee. What made you guys run for the podium? I'm presuming that they're asking what made you accept our offer to come here this evening and speak to your community. This question I'd like to hear from all our panelists, so by all means, in no particular order, please unmute yourselves and let's have a great discussion. Let us know why you chose and accepted Manūfou and I's offer to come on this evening.
I don't know how I wouldn't. You know, you go where good leaders go. You know, it's like they said, if you want water, go to the well. And you both have demonstrated civic responsibility always towards the North of helping our people. My reason for coming on, contrary to popular opinion, I actually hate public speaking, but I will make the effort when I know that it's important enough. What the pandemic has shown me is that we are not going to get through this without each other. But that's the Pacific way. That's always been our way. Whenever we meet in trials of you know, whatever catastrophe or tribulation that we're dealing with, or whatever trial that faces us, our main approach is to come together and to push forward together. And so I only see this as our way forward, and initiatives like this that bring together our voices to lend it towards something that will only benefit our people. This is the start. This is the start, because I don't think we can go back now. You know, a lot of the people on this panel I met during the pandemic, and it's strange that it took isolation for us to make the bridges happen. But now that they're formed, let's continue this track that we're on, and get people like Kai Kahele on into the House, and to get more of us into the House, and get us into our city councils and our public health departments, because we can no longer sit by and watch things happen to us. It is time for us to come together and start saying, hey, we are not going anywhere. This is our country too, and we've done our best to make it better. Now it's time for us to to be involved in it and its direction. Thank you.
You know, for me, I'll jump on real quick. You know, my candidacy to represent Hawaii in Congress is really historic, and it is going to be, you know, knock on wood, only the second time in the history of the state of Hawaii that a Native Hawaiian has been elected to the United States Congress, following the late and great Senator Daniel Kahikina Akaka. So, you know, my candidacy represents that. Why am I here? Because I am a proud Native Hawaiian. I'm a proud Pacific Islander. And this election is one of the most important elections in my lifetime. I would bet most of us on this panel right now have already decided who we're going to vote for president. Obviously, we wouldn't be here if we were not supporting a Biden-Harris ticket. But we have ohana throughout the country, Utah, California, Florida, that maybe haven't made up their minds yet. A significant portion of the country hasn't made up their minds yet. And I feel it's my obligation and our obligation to appeal to those NHPIs all over the country to help educate them so that they can make a well-informed decision. They need to know that when Donald Trump was elected president, the first thing he did was gave over a $1 trillion tax cut to the wealthiest, richest friends of his on Wall Street. We need to know that he wants to take away your health care by repealing the Affordable Care Act. We need to know that he is an anti-immigrant and has anti-immigration policies, that he pulled us out of the Paris climate change agreement, and he is a climate denying candidate. We need to know that he does not support the working class, that he does not support the unions throughout this country and the hardworking middle class. We need to know that he is contributing to the rising inequality of wealth and the hollowing out of the middle class in this country. That is what Donald Trump stands for. And that is why we need to say aloha and ahui ho on November 3rd and send Donald Trump back to New York City where he came from. Mahalo.
Thank you, Senator.
I'll go next. Thank you for that. I want to thank, first of all, Vau and Manūfou, and why I'm here. It's a great question. One is Manūfou. I've known her for a little bit during this election, and I have the highest respect for her. So when she asks me to do something, it's about, I've seen the work she's done uplifting her community, our community, and I can't say no to her. So I'm forever grateful to one of my sisters, and to Faunga Maliga, who's a commissioner in SFUSD, who's also uplifting communities, and he's also, you know, in my corner, you know, supporting me along the way. So those are our big thank yous. Next is my heritage. Why I'm here is because my heritage. I'm deeply ingrained in who I am, and my voice is now louder because there's that portal that we all talked about. There's opportunity for us to advance our people. And when we have the experiences and the lived experiences, you know, it's a calling to step up, to step out of our comfort zone. So I'm here for that. And to run for USD, which Alameda Unified School District, just like Senator there, is I would be the first Pacific Islander LGBTQT in the history of Alameda Unified School District, representing the communities, the 30-some% Asian Pacific Islanders in that community. And the 2020 census, that'll rise. We're the fastest growing population in Alameda County. And the third reason why I'm here is because I think part of our platform as leaders, and we are all leaders, is to inform and educate. And this is what we're doing. We're here to say that Biden and Harris is the best choice for 2020. It's the best choice because of the many reasons that you've all outlined. And it's the best choice because, you know, they are true to the game. I mean, I was a coach and athletic director, so I can talk the cliches. They have the integrity and what it takes to lead this country in the toughest of times. So I have that belief and the trust in Biden, Harris, and the platform there. So please make that informed decision. All of us collectively, as your, you know, we're asking you to make the right vote for Biden, Harris. So again, thank you, and it's all great meeting you all.
Thank you, Verna. Kia, Mane, and Ruby, one of you want to go next?
Sure. So I accepted for all of the, you know, similar reasons as speakers before us, and for all the issues that we talked about earlier, right? Healthcare, climate change, just really across the board. And I think it's so important that, you know, we as Pacific Islanders participate in these processes. I can only speak for American Samoa, but and I don't think majority of our community isn't really, you know, they don't really participate. First of all, because we can't really participate in general elections, but we just don't, we don't have that opportunity to, you know, vote in the general elections. And I don't think, it's just not something that our community is really well versed in or has really participated in. So I'm super grateful for this opportunity for someone from a U.S. territory to be able to, you know, shed a little light on our issues and why the Biden-Harris campaign is the team and the leadership that we need desperately as a U.S. territory and as a country. So yeah, vote Trump out and support Biden and Harris, please. It's about our survival. I really liked how Anna said that. It really is about our survival. It's a matter of life and death.
Thank you, Kia. Mane and Ruby?
I'll go. Ruby, you want to go? Okay, I'll leave it to Ruby to end this all. But really, the reason why I'm here, when Vo reached out to me, I had a decision to make, whether to be silent or whether to be visible, and whether to use my voice to at least influence somebody out there who doesn't have this visibility, correct? And so it is very important when I teach my kids, and I have many youth that I come into contact with, when I teach them how to use their voice, that I practice that same thing I teach. And so it's very important to me that when I'm out here, that I am unapologetically fa'afafine, because we don't get the microphone very often. And it's very, very important that when we come to these spaces, we make ourselves visible for the next person who is sitting there looking at our leadership. And so I came today to not only speak up for myself, but for the next Mane or for the next cutie pie who wants to speak and use their voice. And so I'm just encouraging everyone out there to really do your research, really understand who you're voting for, and make those informed decisions that will impact our communities for the better. Because the next 4 years can either be long or they can be healing and prosperous. So I just really am thankful to Vo. I'm thankful to everyone here and just for the opportunity. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mane. And then lastly, Ruby?
Vo told me if I didn't come, he would kill me. Just kidding. No, I was honored. I was surprised that I was asked to be a part of this. And of course, like when I said it, once you're given the mic, sing, girl. But yeah, just for visibility, just to let anyone else out there know that, you know, they're able to speak on issues that they're not too well versed in. But just to bring light that you are counted, you're part of the conversation. And I've learned so much. Thank you all for sharing. And thank you, Manūfou, too. It's good seeing you guys. Get out there and vote, y'all.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Ms. Ruby, and thank you to every single one of our panelists for answering this call to action and taking this opportunity to speak to our community. In the planning of this event, my whole goal of looking for panelists was to highlight some of the voices of some of the biggest movers and shakers in our community that aren't getting national notoriety. And like Mane and Ruby both said, when you're given the mic, please by all means take it and sing. So a great to everyone here for taking the opportunity to be with us this evening. And thank you to the audience for taking the time and listening to all of our responses and some advice when it comes to mail-in voting and policies that the Biden-Harris administration is proposing for our community. And as the late Representative John Lewis had said, get into trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. Because it's no longer standing on the sidelines, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to get involved. But once again, in closing, thank you for joining us. This is the first of many crucial and important conversations that will be happening in our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community. You may see my face again, whether that's a moderator or on a panel. But once again, this is the first of many. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you to the panelists. And to close us out this evening, we have one last performance from a local Bay Area activist and organizer that couldn't be here with us this evening, but was still happy to get involved and send us a recording of their video to close us out. But thank you again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy our closing entertainment.
I'm 19 years of age, Fijian, and a Bay Area native. Today for you, I'll be singing Redemption Song by Bob Marley. Before I get that started, I'd just like to strongly encourage each and every one of my fellow Pacific Islander brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles to go out and vote this year. Not only this year, but every single election year to come. Not only that, but I'd also like to strongly encourage you to fill out your census forms if you haven't done so. There are only 7 days left, so please do that as soon as possible. Thank you. Old pirates, yes, they rob I. Sold I to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit. But my hands were made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation, triumphantly. Now won't you help to sing these songs of freedom, 'cause all we ever had were redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of that can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, but we've got to fulfill the book. Now won't you help to sing these songs of freedom, 'cause all I ever had were these redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of that can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it, but we've got to fulfill the book. Now won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? 'Cause all I ever had were these redemption songs. Redemption songs, 'cause all we ever have were these redemption songs.